Have you ever wondered why the divine masculine resists the twin flame connection, even when the bond feels undeniable? Why does he pull away at the very moment your souls seem closest, leaving you confused, heartbroken, and questioning whether he truly feels the depth of what you experience? You sense the sacred energy between you, yet he turns silent, distant, or even cold. It feels like rejection, but deep down, your intuition tells you there is more to this story. You are not imagining it. His retreat holds a meaning far greater than what your eyes can see or your heart can immediately understand. In today's video, we will journey into the unseen layers of his resistance. Together, we'll uncover the real reason the divine masculine seems to run from your connection, why he suppresses emotions that his soul already recognizes as divine truth. You will discover that what appears as avoidance or denial is actually a sacred process of inner awakening. Beneath the silence and confusion lies a man being forced to confront his deepest fears, unhealed wounds, and buried pain elements that must surface before he can fully merge with your soul in divine harmony. By understanding this mystery from a higher perspective, your entire view of the twin flame journey will transform. You will no longer see his distance as rejection, but as a necessary step in his evolution, a spiritual crucible that purifies both of you. You'll realize that his resistance is not a barrier, but a mirror of the transformation happening within you as well. When you understand this, your energy shifts from pain to compassion, from confusion to trust. You begin to align with divine timing instead of chasing human validation. Stay until the end of this video, because the insights we're about to explore will reveal how this phase, though painful, is actually the turning point toward true union. You'll see how his resistance hides sacred purpose and how love itself is guiding both of you home. As you watch, open your heart, reflect deeply, and if these words resonate, type in the comments. His resistance is not rejection, it's transformation. Let's begin. Number 1. The masculine awakening from resistance to realization. In the beginning, the divine masculine encounters the connection like a sudden, blinding light, breaking through the fog of his orderly world. It startles him. His natural response is resistance. He retreats into what feels safe logic, structure, and control. He fills his days with work, distractions, and obligations, telling himself that what he feels is just a fleeting infatuation, an emotional mirage that will fade if he ignores it long enough. But deep down, his soul trembles, for even as he tries to bury the pull beneath layers of reason, it grows stronger, more persistent. Echoing in the spaces where silence once offered comfort, he begins to notice it everywhere. The connection he tries to deny follows him like a shadow of truth that refuses to vanish. It whispers through songs that stir forgotten emotions, through dreams that feel more real than waking life, through memories that surface without warning. The pull becomes a pulse, steady, rhythmic, undeniable, weaving its way into every thought, every heartbeat. What he once dismissed as fantasy now becomes the unshakable reality of his own soul awakening. It is no longer just desire, it is a fire, ancient and sacred, that will not be extinguished by denial. As this realization unfolds, his inner world begins to shift. The comfort of logic no longer soothes him. The routines he once used to escape now feel hollow, lifeless. Something within him calls for truth, not the kind found in words or proof, but in presence and surrender. He starts to understand that this connection is not meant to be analyzed or controlled. It is meant to awaken. It demands that he face himself, his fears, his wounds, his illusions of separation. Through her energy, he begins to see what he has long avoided, the parts of himself still yearning to be healed, the light he has long forgotten to honor. And then, clarity emerges like dawn after a long night. He realizes that she was never his missing piece. She was always his mirror. In her presence, he recognizes not what he lacks, but what he truly is. Every emotion she stirs within him, love, fear, desire, pain, is a reflection of his own unfinished becoming. Through her reflection, he learns that love is not about possession or completion, but remembrance, remembering the divine essence that both share. As this understanding deepens, running is no longer an option. The silence that once comforted him now hums with her energy. Every breath carries her essence. Every heartbeat echoes her name. Yet this time, he does not flee from it. He allows it. He breathes it in. In surrendering to the very force he once resisted, he begins to awaken. And in that surrender, a profound peace is born. He no longer seeks to own love, but to embody it. He no longer strives to control the connection, but to honor it. What began as resistance has become realization, the recognition that she was never his destination, but his catalyst. Through her, he awakens to himself, and through himself, he finally understands the sacred truth. This journey was never about finding another, but about returning home to the divine within. Number 2, the relentless pull beyond logic. For what feels like an eternity, the divine masculine convinces himself that detachment equals strength. He buries himself in logic, in the comfort of reason and the structure of routine. His days become filled with endless responsibilities and distractions, work, noise, and movement, designed to keep his mind too busy to feel. He tells himself he's doing the right thing, that discipline will silence the ache within. Yet when night falls and the world around him grows still, the illusion begins to crumble. In the silence, her energy rises again, soft yet undeniable, pressing against his heart like an echo of truth he can no longer ignore. No matter how much he tries to bury it, truth has a way of finding him. At first, he calls it longing, nostalgia, or weakness. He tries to rationalize it away, but what he feels is far deeper than memory. It is the soul's magnetic call for reunion. The ache that once felt like pain now reveals itself as a sacred signal, a divine summons from within. It isn't her ghost that haunts him, but his own higher self reaching through the fog of denial, urging him to remember who he truly is. He begins to see that what he's running from is not her love, but the reflection of his own light shining through her presence. Every attempt to suppress it only magnifies the intensity, until logic collapses under the sheer weight of truth. And then, something profound happens. The exhaustion of resistance transforms into surrender. In that quiet moment of clarity, he understands that he was never fighting her, he was fighting himself. The pain of separation becomes the teacher that reveals the ultimate paradox. He does not merely miss her, he misses the part of himself that awakens in her presence. She is not an external force pulling him out of alignment, but the mirror guiding him back to his center. What he once labeled as obsession is revealed to be devotion not to a person, but to the soul's own call to awaken. Now, the pull no longer feels like torment, it becomes a compass. Each heartbeat, each intuitive nudge draws him closer to truth. The connection he resisted becomes the very current that carries him towards self-realization. He finally understands that this bond was never meant to imprison him, but to liberate him from the illusions of separation. The love he tried to deny was, all along, the voice of his own divinity calling him home. Imagine a man sitting alone in his office late at night, surrounded by glowing computer screens and stacks of unfinished work. He tells himself he's staying busy because of ambition, but deep down, he knows he's trying to drown out something deeper, the quiet ache that rises whenever the world slows down. For weeks, he's ignored the pull, convincing himself it's just his imagination. But then, one night, as he pauses to take a breath, he suddenly feels it again, that familiar warmth in his chest, a pulse that doesn't belong to his body alone. It's her energy, gentle yet insistent, brushing through his awareness like a whisper only his soul can hear. He remembers her laughter, the way her presence made him feel seen, and in that instant, he realizes it's not about her physical form at all. It's about what she awakened within him, the forgotten parts of his own soul that crave truth, connection, and authenticity. The pain he once tried to escape transforms into a sacred mirror, reflecting his deepest longing for wholeness. He finally understands that she was never the source of his ache. She was the catalyst guiding him back to himself. Number 3, breaking open, the journey to truth. There comes a moment in every soul's evolution when resistance no longer serves its purpose. The divine masculine reaches that threshold not through logic, but through exhaustion. He no longer runs from love, nor hides behind the walls of fear. Instead, he pauses not out of confusion, but awakening. Within that stillness, a quiet yet powerful transformation begins to unfold. The man who once built his identity on control and reason now feels these very traits tightening around him like a cage. What once gave him structure now feels suffocating. His soul, weary of endless pretense, begins to whisper that safety without truth is not peace, it is stagnation. As the old self starts to crumble, he finds himself facing the terrifying beauty of vulnerability. For years, he equated surrender with weakness, believing that logic could save him from pain. But now, he begins to see that the real danger lies not in surrendering to love, but in denying it. The fear of being open is gradually replaced by a far more profound fear, the fear of never truly living. This realization shatters him in the best possible way. It breaks open the hardened layers of conditioning and pride, exposing the raw essence of who he is beneath all his masks. This breaking open is not destruction. It is divine alchemy. Pain becomes the fire that purifies. Every emotion he once suppressed, grief, longing, tenderness, rises from the ashes of denial, demanding to be felt and released. The illusion of control dissolves, and in its place, authenticity begins to take form. He starts to see that peace was never meant to be manufactured through logic, but discovered through surrender. What he feared most, losing himself, was never the truth. The truth is that only by letting go can he return to himself. Standing between two worlds, the known and the unknown, he begins to understand the sacred paradox of awakening. The known offers familiarity but no growth. The unknown, though uncertain, is alive with divine potential. His truth cannot be studied, defined, or controlled. It can only be lived. In this delicate space between collapse and creation, he learns that love is not a possession, not something to be claimed or contained. Love is a state of being and expansion, a remembrance of who he truly is beneath all illusions. And so, the masculine awakens not as the conqueror of love, but as its vessel. He no longer seeks to hold love within his hands, but to let it move through him, shaping his choices, softening his edges, and guiding his purpose. His surrender is not an ending, but a beginning, the rebirth of a man no longer bound by fear, but anchored in truth. This is the journey to authenticity, where the heart finally becomes what it was always meant to be, a living expression of love itself. Number 4, the feminine's shift, anchoring in self. While the masculine transforms through the fires of chaos and surrender, the divine feminine's transformation unfolds in stillness. Her awakening is not born from pursuit, but from peace. There comes a sacred moment when she no longer chases the connection, no longer measures her worth by his presence, or waits for his validation to confirm her value. Instead, she turns inward and roots herself in her own divine essence, in the radiant certainty of who she is. This is the moment of remembrance. She remembers that her love was never meant to be a currency for approval, but a frequency of truth. She stops asking when he will return or how he feels, because she finally understands that the true reunion begins within. Her energy begins to ground, not in longing, but in sovereignty. She becomes steady, centered, and magnetic, the calm eye in the center of a storm that once pulled her in every direction. Her silence no longer feels like absence. It becomes a sacred presence in itself, a vibration so steady that it speaks louder than any words ever could. This shift transforms everything. The chaos that once defined the connection begins to dissolve, replaced by an effortless grace. Where she once reached outward, she now radiates from within. She no longer sends energy out of desperation or fear. Instead, her love becomes a stable field, unwavering, compassionate, and deeply aligned with divine truth. It is no longer an emotional current trying to draw him back. It is a sacred resonance that simply is, and because energy never lies, he feels this shift immediately. From miles away, he senses her in ways he cannot explain. The old energetic cords that once bound him through anxiety now become pathways of peace. Her silence unsettles him at first, not because it's cold, but because it is powerful. It carries a quiet certainty that no longer pleads, no longer demands, but simply invites. In her stillness, he is confronted with something he cannot escape, the reflection of unconditional love, steady and whole, waiting for nothing yet transforming everything. Through her embodiment of peace, She becomes the mirror of his highest potential. Her stability awakens within him a longing not for possession, but for transformation. He begins to realize that her strength was never about control, it was about faith. She does not need to call him home because her energy has already built a home within itself. And in that space, he feels something stir, not because she calls out, but because she is. This is the feminine's sacred shift, the moment when her light no longer seeks to be seen, but chooses to shine. She embodies love without needing recognition, truth without needing validation, and peace without needing closure. Anchored deeply in her divine self, she becomes the vibration that rebalances the entire connection. And from that place of inner wholeness, she reminds the masculine and the world that love's truest power has never been in the chase, but in the becoming. If you've made it this far in the journey, take a deep breath, because what you've just explored is not just a story about energy, but a mirror of your own awakening. Every shift, every pause, every wave of emotion has been guiding you closer to your truth. I invite you now to take a moment and reflect. Where are you in this journey? Are you learning to surrender like the masculine, or anchoring in peace like the feminine? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if you're ready to affirm your alignment, type, "I am love in motion, calm in truth, and grounded in light." Let that be your declaration to the universe. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone on their own path, and stay until the end for what comes next. The next phase of awakening is where everything begins to merge into one. Number 5. The inner realization coming home to himself. There comes a moment in every divine masculine's journey when denial no longer feels like strength, but suffocation. The armor he has worn for years, made of logic, control, and the illusion of power, begins to weigh heavily on his spirit. What once felt like discipline now feels like distance. What once looked like composure now feels like emptiness. The roles he played to appear unshaken begin to crumble from within, and he can no longer hide behind the masks of certainty or the walls of pride. This moment is not a breakdown, it is the beginning of truth. He starts to see that pretending to be unaffected, to be invincible, has been the greatest form of self-abandonment. Every time he silenced his emotions in the name of strength, he unknowingly turned away from his own soul. The external success, the structure, the rational mind, all of it starts to lose meaning when it no longer aligns with the pulse of his heart. What he used to call stability now feels like a cage, and the only way out is inward. As this realization deepens, a quiet awakening unfolds. It strips him bare, taking away everything that was built on illusion. He sees that this journey has never been about chasing her, proving himself, or trying to control what love should look like. It is about returning to integrity, to the unshakable honesty that exists when he no longer fears being vulnerable. In the space where his old defenses fall away, a new kind of strength emerges, one rooted not in domination, but in presence. For the first time, he begins to understand that love is not weakness. It is the most courageous act a soul can choose. To open his heart after lifetimes of guarding it. To stand in front of truth without armor, that is divine bravery. He learns that to be real is to be powerful, to feel deeply is to be alive, and to surrender is to rise. This is not the surrender of defeat, but the surrender of alignment, where resistance dissolves and authenticity takes its place. And as he comes home to himself, something profound happens. The separation he once felt from his divine feminine fades. He recognizes her not as an external figure to chase, but as a reflection of the love that already lives within him. She is the vibration of his own truth, the mirror guiding him back to the divine essence he had forgotten. This is the moment of return, the homecoming of the soul. In reclaiming his truth, he reunites not only with her energy, but with the infinite part of himself that had always been seeking love in all the wrong places. Now, he no longer runs, he no longer hides. He simply stands in the quiet radiance of his own being, knowing that the union he sought was never outside him, it was always within. Number 6. The feminine's sovereign presence, embodying love. There comes a time when the divine feminine no longer waits, pleads, or proves. She rises from the ashes of longing and steps into the truth of who she has always been, love in its purest form. no longer dependent on validation or external recognition. She realizes that her worth has never been measured by another's gaze, nor her fulfillment defined by another's presence. She embodies love not as emotion, but as existence itself. Her energy radiates a sacred stillness, a quiet magnetism that draws from the depth of the divine. She no longer needs to chase union, for she has become union, the seamless harmony between soul and spirit, between human and divine. Her every breath, her every movement, emanates peace, grace, and unwavering strength. The frequency of her love is no longer conditional or pleading, it is sovereign, anchored in her own heart. This transformation is not loud or dramatic. It happens in silence, in the moments she chooses peace over pursuit, surrender over struggle, truth over illusion. Through this stillness, she becomes the unspoken call that the divine masculine feels within his own being. Her energy becomes a guiding light, soft yet unstoppable, gentle yet commanding. She no longer needs to reach for him with words, because her vibration speaks the language of the soul. In her self-anchored presence, he senses home. She becomes the mirror through which he remembers his own divinity, the compass that directs him back to truth, not by effort or persuasion, but by embodiment. Her power lies not in control, but in her ability to remain rooted in unconditional love, a love that frees rather than binds, that uplifts rather than demands. This is not a rejection of love, it is mastery of it. She has not turned away from him, she has simply turned inward. In doing so, she merges with the divine current that runs through all things. She becomes the ocean that holds both their reflections, the silence that carries every answer he seeks. And as she stands fully in her sovereignty, she becomes the very vibration his soul has been searching for all along, not the echo of need, but the presence of truth. This is the sacred feminine in her highest expression, love embodied, radiant, free, and whole. Through her, the world remembers what it means to be love itself. As we stand in this energy of the feminine's sovereign embodiment, take a moment to feel what this means within your own journey. Have you reached that point where love no longer feels like waiting, but becoming? Where peace flows not from another's presence, but from the sanctuary of your own heart? This phase invites you to reflect on the love you've learned to anchor within yourself, a love that no longer chases, but simply is. I'd love to hear how this resonates with you. Share your reflections in the comments below, or simply type, "I am love embodied," if this message speaks to your soul. Your words not only ground your intention, but also send ripples of healing energy into the collective. Number 7. The masculine's return, a journey of alignment. The return of the divine masculine is not marked by grand gestures, emotional turbulence, or desperate longing. It is quiet, yet powerful, grounded in truth rather than fantasy. This time, he does not come back out of need or guilt, but from a place of deep awareness. His energy is steady, his intentions clear. He no longer views love as something external to chase or conquer. It has become something he lives and breathes. Love, for him, is now a vibration, a way of being, a reflection of his own inner wholeness. The illusions that once clouded his vision begin to dissolve. He no longer sees the divine feminine as the missing half that can complete him, but as the mirror that reflects his own divinity. Every time he looks at her, he sees not what he lacks, but what he has finally reclaimed within himself. The longing that once felt like an ache has transformed into recognition, a remembrance of the soul's natural state of unity. Union, he now understands, is not a final destination to reach, but a sacred frequency to embody. It is not about arriving somewhere or achieving something, it is about aligning with the truth of who he already is. Each step he takes toward her is no longer fueled by fear of loss or desire for possession. Instead, each step is an act of devotion to truth, a return to authenticity, a movement toward balance between the human and the divine within him. In this space of awareness, alignment becomes the real reunion. It is not physical closeness that defines union, but energetic harmony. He realizes that walking beside her means walking beside himself, mirroring the balance of the masculine and feminine energies within. No longer trapped in cycles of running and chasing, he moves with calm presence and inner clarity. There is no more need to prove, to win, or to hold. Love, at this stage, has matured into a sacred equilibrium where giving and receiving flow as one, and both souls rise together in freedom. The divine masculine has finally learned that true return does not come through pursuit, but through alignment. In this sacred maturity, he no longer runs toward her nor away from her. Instead, he stands beside her equal, awake and free, each reflecting the other's light, walking forward not as two searching souls, but as one consciousness harmonized in truth. Number 8. The shift to embodiment from waiting to being. There comes a sacred turning point in the divine feminine's journey when waiting no longer defines her existence. She no longer stands still in longing or uncertainty, hoping for him to return or awaken. Instead, she begins to live fully, radiantly, unapologetically. She breathes her truth into every moment and moves with the quiet confidence of someone who knows that love was never lost, only evolving. Her energy no longer reaches outward for validation or reassurance. It flows inward and expands, creating a field of peace that speaks louder than words. This stillness within her is not emptiness, it is completion. It is the calm that comes after the storm, the silence that follows understanding. She no longer confuses solitude with absence, for she has discovered that she is never truly alone. Her presence is magnetic, her energy sovereign, and her heart open yet unattached. The divine feminine has become the embodiment of love itself, not a seeker of it. And he, the divine masculine, feels this shift like gravity. It pulls him without force, calls him without words. It is subtle yet undeniable, a frequency his soul cannot resist. Her peace becomes the invitation that speaks directly to his higher self. For the first time, he realizes that the liberation he has been searching for does not lie in the external world or in the chase for success, but in the energy of her stillness. In her sovereignty, he sees the mirror of his own potential, the reminder that true freedom comes from alignment, not control. As she stands in her light, rooted in her essence, he begins to rise in his truth. The old dynamics of waiting, chasing, and retreating dissolve. There is no longer a need for pursuit or persuasion. Instead, love flows naturally, guided by divine timing rather than human effort. Union, at this stage, becomes effortless not because the journey has ended, but because the illusion of separation has finally been released. Together, they no longer chase love as an external goal. They embody love as a frequency, a living vibration that harmonizes their souls. She holds the energy of divine receptivity, he embodies sacred presence. In this perfect balance, they create a field where love simply is not conditional, not dependent, but eternal. This is the sacred shift from waiting to being, the moment when love stops existing as a longing and begins to breathe as truth. It is the realization that the ultimate union is not something to be found in another, but something to be lived from within. And in that shared embodiment, they discover that the journey was never about becoming whole together. It was about remembering that they always were. What may have once appeared as resistance in the divine masculine was never truly rejection. It was sacred preparation. Every pause, every silence, every distance carried a hidden purpose, gently guiding both souls back into alignment with their higher truth. What felt like separation was, in truth, an initiation, one that required both the masculine and feminine to rediscover love not as a chase, but as a state of being. Union, in its purest form, is not something found in another person. It is the awakening of divine remembrance within yourself, the moment when love stops being an external pursuit and becomes your natural frequency. It is the realization that you were never truly apart, only learning to see through the veils of illusion that made you forget your oneness. When both the masculine and feminine embody this truth, when they choose love over fear, authenticity over performance, and surrender over control, they meet not as seekers, but as mirrors reflecting the same wholeness. This is the sacred reunion, not two halves becoming one, but two wholes recognizing the divine essence within each other. So if this message resonates with your soul, take a deep breath and affirm your own truth in this moment. Declare it in the comments by writing, "Walking the path of truth." Let this phrase become your energetic signature, a vow to live, love, and align with authenticity. If you felt the calling within these words, remember to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Universe to continue walking beside others on this sacred twin flame journey. Your awakening is not an isolated story. It is part of a greater wave of consciousness rising across the planet. Every time you choose truth, you help raise the frequency for all. You are not waiting for union, you are becoming it. The divine was never outside you, it has always lived within your heart, patiently waiting for you to remember.